Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Okay. So Hervé explained what note by note is, and I remember when I heard about it first and I saw it, I was very inspired, and I thought that's a project that students back in Dublin could do, and it's so innovative. What better way to get them thinking, as we say, outside the box? And it's when we introduce the topics in Dublin, the note by note project, you can see them kind of thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to make a dish with this type of cooking? Because it's completely different to what they're used to. But it's exactly what they need, because it gets them thinking. So, okay, so these are some of the students, and we had a visiting professor actually from Korea who'd spent time already with Hervé and friends, and he came to Dublin just to see what we were doing. So the students start the project already at the beginning of the semester, and what they do, we tell them what note by note is, and that they have a theme, which is normally the theme of the contest in Paris. And as we saw, it was suspensions last year. Yes, it was suspensions. Who were these students? Well, normally they're master students, and they would be mainly chefs. But there would be some students there who would have degrees in science, in chemistry, like medicinal chemistry. We do sometimes do the project with undergraduate students if they have done quite a bit of science as part. So culinary science students you see in this picture, also food innovation students, or nutraceutical students. So it just depends on the who's in the class basically. So they'll get an idea, they do the research, and then they come in for 5 weeks. That's 3 hours each week to make their dish or their drink. And I'll show you later some examples of those dishes and drinks. As Hervé showed you, this was made by his friend Pierre Gagnier, who's a famous French chef and has Michelin star restaurants all around the world. We usually start, and we'll be doing this actually next week, to show the students how to make this dish as an example of a note by note dish. What this contains is lemon granite on the left, in the middle is a sugar crisp, and on the right are apple pearls. But there's no lemons and there's no apples in at all. So, but yet it gives the flavor of lemon and of apple. So in the granite, it's ice, it's sugar, it's water, it's a lemon compound, a lemon flavored compound. In the middle, it's glucose. And then we have the apple, which is a whey extract from milk, and sodium alginate, calcium chloride, and apple flavor compound. So when they see that, they start to relax a bit, and they realize, yes, there's definitely, it's not as difficult as we might have thought it would be. So my store man is not very happy because I'm taking over the stores in TU Dublin, and we've just moved to a new campus, by the way, and we've a bigger storeroom, so I'm taking over, and we're buying all these pure compounds for students to use. So sometimes we do use compounds which would be a mixture of compounds, but then we need to know what's in the mixture, otherwise we're not able to use it. So when Rio asked me 2 years ago to write a paper on note by note cooking, and it was for the Journal of Ethnic Food, so I was thinking, oh, what am I going to write about? This is going to be a short paper. So, but I was actually amazed when I went back through 8 years of reports, and there was 87 of the 100 and whatever available for me to look at. And when I went back through them, I discovered that 62% of the students had been inspired by traditional foods and drinks, and 38% were more using abstract themes like a forest floor, for example, or a scene at the beach with a palm tree on the sand, on the sea coming in on the beach. So it was very interesting, and I hadn't realized, and thank you, Rio, because if you hadn't asked me to do the paper, I wouldn't have realized the extent to which students were basing their ideas for their note by note dish on traditional foods and drinks. And I'll show you when we dug a bit deeper, just where exactly the inspirations are coming from. So this bar chart shows you that it was mostly American influence and British, and otherwise Italian, French, and other European inspired ideas. Sometimes the students, they're not all Irish, they're coming from other countries. So in one of the Italian cases there, the student was inspired by an Italian dish from their own country. And we've Canada down the list there. We had a Canadian student who was inspired by the maple flavors to use in their dish. So, it just doesn't mean if you're an Irish student that you're automatically going to pick an Irish inspired dish. And later I'll show you an example of an Irish breakfast note by note dish, which a Greek student had actually put together. So we'll have a look at that in a few minutes. But when I went further again into I'm not going to go through everything here, but the American examples were like cheesecake, cupcakes for the sweet sort of foods for the note by note dishes, and savory would be things like fried chicken or surf and turf, drinks like whiskey sour. British ones were apple crumble, ice cream and jelly is really popular in the UK and Ireland. Trifle is very popular, that's with jelly and custard and cream. And English tea, and we'll have an example in a few minutes of that, and the Italian example, cannelloni. So it was actually very interesting when you dig deeper into the reports and you see their inspirations of where they're coming from. So I just then went through the text of the 87 reports just to see the context. And I'm interested to hear Hervé saying about the flavor of the food. So in the majority of these context in the reports, they were talking about recipes, but other things they talked about were methods and flavor, taste, meals, ingredients, processes, colors. We'll see an example of color of beetroot being an influence, and the form or the shape, like the crackers, for example. So it was actually very, very interesting to see all this, and it's great because I can now tell the students, and we're actually going to do this module with the international master students that are now in Paris and are coming to Dublin for a semester. And for the first time ever, we're going to do that module. So we'll have students from all over the world on that module, and it's going to be very interesting to see. But I can tell them all this information, which is really great. So that's just more text from the reports. But I like this one, which said that a student described their own dish as a note by note dish that would be traditional and familiar to the consumer, but offer the opposite, a modernized version of an old-fashioned meal with a completely different flavor, structure, aroma. And that's so, it seems to me what they're trying to link is tradition with note by note, but trying to get over the neophobia that some consumers might have. And you mentioned chemicals, Hervé, when people hear chemicals, they just think, that doesn't sound good. But of course, sure, we're all made of chemicals. Everything around us is made of chemicals. It's just to jump that hurdle and get over it. And this seems to be one of the ways that the students were tackling that. So here's some examples. I'm just going to show you some examples and the themes associated with them. So this theme, one of the years, was to use a pure compound called methional. Methional is linked with potato flavor, but also with tea. It's found in teas as well. So this picture here is a traditional Sunday roast, which is normally or popularly eaten on Sunday afternoons in both Ireland and the UK, and it's eaten either at home or out in restaurants or pubs. It's very popular. and it's roast chicken, roast potatoes, and vegetables. So the student that year used that idea, obviously not recreating it, but just the idea of the Sunday roast, because this is the note by note dish that he created. And he was taking flavors like rosemary, so it's quite faint, but there's pearls there, which are flavored with a rosemary herb flavor, meringue with metiono flavor, carrot tuiles with the carrot flavor in the tuiles, and maltodextrin, which was giving the illusion of the mashed potato with metiono in it. And it was published in New Scientist magazine, that's in 2014. And you see some of the recipes there. The potato meringue has the metiono and sucrose, albumin powder, and water. So it was all the recipes are given there. And that's the student. He got a box of flavor compounds, pure compounds, as his prize. He's a chef, actually, and he's working in a Michelin star hotel restaurant in the UK. So he was very happy with that. And the second dish or drink in this case that I'll show you, using metiono again, we saw it there with a link to potatoes. Now we're looking at a link to a traditional English or Irish cup of tea. I don't know how many millions of cups of tea are drunk every day in Ireland and in the UK, but it's probably one of the most popular beverages. As you see, it's different to continental Europe, where in UK and Ireland, milk is normally added, and some people like sugar in it. And it's a real, it's a real discussion point, cup of tea. How do you like your cup of tea? Do you like it weak? Do you like it medium? Do you like it strong? And if anyone's having any problems in their life, they always try to solve it with a cup of tea. Oh, won't you have a cup of tea? So there's a great fondness attached to cups of tea as well. So anyway, here's the note by note inspired drink. It's not obviously an English Irish cup of tea. It's a note by note inspiration from tea. On the bottom are the milk pearls containing protein extracted from milk, whey, and casein. On top of that is a foam which contains the metiono compound and other tea flavor compounds. And on the top is a crisp structure, which is actually sugar. So the elements of the tea that we saw there a minute ago are there, but a totally different format and presentation. And that's our note by note version. Not a version, but it's a note by note drink. Another one I'll show you is the Black Forest Gatto, famous from the 16th century from the Black Forest region of Germany. And in that region, it's of course associated with cherries and the liqueur. So the theme that year was crisp and crackling, to introduce some element of crispiness and crackling into the dish. So one of the students, she developed a note by note dish, and she made a honeycomb so that when you bit into the honeycomb, it collapsed in, with the force of your teeth and broke down the bubbles that had been formed from the carbon dioxide, which had been produced from the sodium hydrogen carbonate. So the sodium hydrogen carbonate created carbon dioxide bubbles, and they evaporated during cooking, and the whole structure collapsed in your mouth and formed a crackling. And then she also made an isomalt dome, which the diner shattered with a spoon, and she had put smoke inside the dome, so it gave the illusion of the forest and the mistiness in the forest. And then she used cherry flavors and for the pink parts there, and it was a sponge with cherry flavor and chocolate flavor with different color, pure compound colors, and chocolate flavor as well. And that was she was one of the winners in the student competition, as was the note by note dish that I showed you previously, the Sunday chicken roast inspired dish. And that's Ruth with the black t-shirt beside Hervé. Ruth actually had a degree in medicinal chemistry from Trinity College Dublin, and then she did the master's in culinary innovation at TU Dublin. So she was combining her scientific knowledge and her culinary skills and applying that in the kitchen to develop her dish. So on to another dish, and this is one of the more recent winning dishes in the student category, and I hope I'm inspiring some of you in Japan to enter the competition. We would love to see some Japanese. We have Koreans, as we said, had Korean participants, and why not have some Japanese participants? So please, you're very welcome. This was a cocktail and a direct. Okay, so we have the cocktail on the left, obviously, with the straws, and beside it is what's called a crispy bacon or rasher, which is very popular again in Ireland and also the UK. And on the other side, on the right, we have a direct, which Hervé explained what that was. It's containing protein content. I hope I'm saying this correctly, that you would find in meat, but obviously there's no meat in it. And of course, you don't have to structure it as meat would be structured. You can adapt it as you wish. But here the student was a chef, and he designed it so it looks like a transverse section through a piece of meat muscle. But of course, there's no meat in it. The other thing I just want to say before I give a bit more detail is the direct that has no meat, as I said, but it has plant protein in it. So through note by note, you can create dishes and drinks as you wish, whatever type of protein, whatever percentage protein. And if people have allergies or, you know, medical problems eating, you can design the food to you know, make it bespoke to whatever they can eat. There's traceability as well on everything, so we know where everything came from, where all the ingredients came from. Anyway, back to this picture on the left. The drink was based on eggnog, which is a traditional drink in the United States. Originally, before it came to the United States, it would have had brandy or wine in it. But there was a lot of taxes in the United States on those drinks. So when this recipe came to America, they changed it to rum. And what the student did was he gave the drink the flavor of bacon, and he gave that bacon crisp the flavor of the eggnog. So the diners were expecting eggnog drink and a bacon crisp, but they got completely different flavors. They'd switched. In the case of the direct, he used, back to traditional link, he used the Russian popular combination of horseradish and beetroot. So there's beetroot color, you know, the color we associate with beetroot, and flavors of horseradish in this dish. And it's linking back to that combination that's very popular in Russia. So there was a lot going on here, and he joined first in the student category in the competition. I think that was in 2019 when Direx was the team. So when those students came into TU Dublin, we say, here's the team, think of a dish and a drink that you want to make, and you've to have it done by the end of 12 weeks. The module lasts for 12 weeks. Okay, so that's how it works. And that's how he modeled his design of the direct. So it's modeled on the muscle. Of course, there's no meat in it, none whatsoever. It's plant proteins, and he put it under a cloche, which again had smoke flavour in it, just to add another dimension to the dish. So yeah, I've kind of talked around that. So these are note by note. Everything here is note by note. And that's the student at the top left. As I said, he's a chef, and he was luckily in the days when we could travel to Paris, and that's looking like we can again, so that's great. And he's explaining all about his dish there. Now, in the corner on the bottom left, you'd see an Irish breakfast. That was the joint first place winner by a student who's Greek, and she took her inspiration from Irish breakfast, but none of this has anything to do with Irish breakfast. It just has the idea of an Irish breakfast. So this would be your typical Irish breakfast. There's mushrooms, sausage, pork sausage, either fried egg or scrambled egg, and there's like a German bloodwurst sausage, which is made with pig's blood, and cereal like oats, and then sometimes you have white pudding. This is called black pudding in Ireland, but you can also get the white pudding, which doesn't have the blood of the pig in it. So there's variations depending on which part of Ireland or which part of the UK you go to. And by the way, very few Irish people would eat this for breakfast, even though all the tourists come and think we all eat this, but I don't know anybody that eats it, but anyway. So Eugenia, the student, she was inspired by this, and this was her winning dish. The egg, as we say, is not an egg, but you saw something similar with Hervé. The white has yogurt flavor in it, so everything here is actually sweet, not savory. There's color compounds, flavor compounds, agar as well in both the yolk and in the white. In the middle, there's a foam, which is a nod, as we would say, to a Bloody Mary drink. So that's where the tomato part comes in. And then she has a kind of a layered block there on the right, which was the idea of the sausage and the beans, but of course they're jelly, sweet jellies, no sausage, no beans at all. And all of these students have come up with the idea and have developed all of this in 5 weeks in the kitchens. So really, when you think about it, it's pretty good work. Now, we weren't able to travel to Paris in 2020 and 2021, sadly, but we did have the online competition, which was great. And our prize-winning drink for 2020 was based on the pina colada. And this student, the theme, well, she used the theme, which was to use pectin, the gelling agent, but to use it with low sugar, just to get gelling at the lowest sugar you could get. And she came up with that drink then. Then in 2021, the competition this year gone by was suspensions. So that was the third prize there for a chef who his idea was to put a fish suspended in the bag. So the first and second, so we did extremely well. We're really happy this year. We got first, second, and third in the student section of the contest. So the winning dish for suspensions was by a student from Brazil, Tiago, and he based it on trifle, but he used the flavors from Brazil because he used coffee and banana, which wouldn't be typical of the English or the Irish trifle, but it is in Brazil. So again, he's linking back to what he knows from his own country and the flavor notes that they use. And the second place was a popping candy powder, which was an Irish student who is also a chef. So we were very, very happy with that. So just some publications. Well, Hervé, I don't think you mentioned your book, did you, on Note by Note cooking? Which did you publish that in 2014, I think, was it? or where's something around that. And it's very useful for our students because there's lots of recipes in it, and they can have a look at those. And of course, the chapters about all the properties of foods, consistency, for example, and colors and so on. And there's various publications that we've done and that Hervé has done. So that's there for you to have a look at. And you mentioned the book, and we also, the book has chapters on note by note cooking. There's recipes at the back, some fantastic recipes on by some of the chefs around the world that are restaurants, and they've made some lovely dishes. And that's the at the end there, the paper that I did with my colleague Pauline, who's a chef and a student who did the DREX. And you can read more. It's all there online in the Journal of Ethnic Foods on creation. I like to call them bespoke. I know you like to call them synthetic note by note dishes, Hervé, and how they were inspired by traditional foods. So if you have any questions, that's happy to try and answer them. Thank you.